This is Spartan 117.
Anyone hear me? Over.
Isolate that signal. Master Chief, you mind telling me what you're doing on that ship?
Sir, finishing this fight.
Welcome back to Finish the Fight, a Halo podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Reiners.
And I'm your host, Alex Kendall. And as always, this podcast is sponsored by Audible. So stay tuned to the middle of this episode to get your free audiobook at audibletrial.com/finishthefight.
Before we get into the topic at hand for today, let's go over the very limited news that's been going on right now with Halo. So 343 Industries has released screenshots of Halo 3 and Halo 3 ODST on PC, and Halo 2 is coming officially to PC here soon.
Yeah.
Not much going on in that front.
Yeah, we're going to have a continued rollout, so we'll kind of be keep tracking it as it comes along, but just expect as this year continues and as we slowly emerge from COVID that we'll start to see possibly a little bit more, maybe infinite news, maybe not. You know, we have really no idea right now, but for now, we're going to keep seeing everything roll to Halo MCC on Steam for the PC.
Yeah. And then not officially news as of right now, but check back on our social or maybe, join our Discord because we will be talking more about everything that will be revealed for the Xbox Series X.
Yeah, because that drops, this Friday?
Thursday, and we're recording on a Monday right now.
Okay. So whenever this episode drops, it'll be happening. So we'll be there, discuss some details, see what we like, see what we don't like. I mean, thus far, looks like it can compete with PC at this point, which is really, really cool that we're now actually getting really good tech in a console to hopefully boost it up towards PlayStation sales again.
Yeah. Plus, it just looks cool.
Or just buy a
Just
Switch.
looks cool.
Just buy a Switch.
Well, you can't right now.
It's true. Just buy a secondhand Switch.
But with that being said, now let's talk about the book that we're going to be covering, which is The Thursday War. So we are now bouncing back into the Kilo 5 trilogy. We are now revisiting Kilo 5 and Sangheili as well, and kind of picking up right where we left off. But before we dive into the story, let's go over the book, the author, and writing the book itself. The Thursday War is the 11th book in the Halo universe, written by Karen Traviss. The book continues the story of Kilo 5 and Oni. The book was released October 2nd, 2012, published by Tor Books, and it contains 448 pages. It would be re-released in 2019, this time containing 464 pages. And finally, the audiobook is narrated by Ewan Morton.
And to give you guys a little reiteration on who Karen Traviss is, she is an English writer, and she has a pretty colorful past, which is pretty awesome to kind of see where she's come today. She was a former TV and newspaper reporter, defense correspondent, advertising copywriter, police media spokeswoman, and a public relations manager. So she's kind of been all over the realm of writing, whether it be for creative or for publicity. She's kind of got that handled down.
And remember, we dove a lot more into the history of her being an author in our previous episode, so definitely go check that out if you haven't to find out more about her.
And finally, she has written books and comics for the Halo, Gears of War, G.I. Joe, Star Wars, and Batman Arkham universes. So she has her hand around some gaming universes.
Yeah. Kind of like Cryptum as well, there wasn't a lot of new information when it came to writing this book. It's the middle book, kind of the story that we got from behind the scenes for Glasslands is kind of transferring over to this one as well. I did, however, find one quote from her about the Thursday War specifically, which she states, "I wanted to focus on what it feels like to operate in a fragile ceasefire that's turning into the mass of a small, unpredictable wars where the enemy is much harder to spot and define. It's not about big set-piece space battles, superheroes, and hardware. This is a messy conflict set at close quarters by real people with their own problems, whether those people are human, alien, or artificial intelligences." And May 4th, 2012, Tor Books would officially reveal the title, cover, and release the date for the Thursday War. So that's kind of just a standard for all the Tor Books.
And as of recording, that's exactly 8 years ago today.
Oh, it is. So they kind of tried to thwart Star Wars Day. Fools. They should. That's why no one knew about this.
They went after it. They created their own Thursday War.
That's our joke for the day. You guys can clock out now.
Yep, see you guys later. Now moving over to the characters that we're going to see. So some of these are familiar, some we're going to see for the first, possibly last time, but I'll break them down for you. On the AI side, we have BB or Black Box, and Anya, Anya, however you want to pronounce it, which was the shipboard AI on the Infinity at the time. Humans, we have Kilo 5, and within Kilo 5, we have Captain Saren Osman, Staff Sergeant Malcolm Mal Geffen, Sergeant Leon Devereaux, Corporal Vasily Vaz Beloy, Professor Evan Phillips, or as the elites call him, Phyllis, and Naomi Sensky Spartan 010. Now, for the rest of the UNSC, we have Admiral and Oni, Admiral Margaret Parangowski, Admiral Lord Terrence Hood, Irina Magnuson, Mike Spencer, Hugo Barton, Austin, Commander Thomas Lasky, Captain Andrew Del Rio, Dr. Catherine Halsey. And then we also have the Sangheili. We have Thelvadam, Jul Umdama, Avumed Telkam, Raya Umdama, Noxan Umdama, Dural Umdama, and Forze Umdama. And finally, for our lovable squishy floaty friends, the Huragok, we have Prone to Drift, Requires Adjustment, and Leaks Repaired.
Dumbest names.
I
ever.
love them. It's the easiest names. You say dumbest names? Here, go talk to some grunts or some Sangheili and go ahead and give me dumb names.
All right, now that we have learned what little there is to know about the backstory of this book, essentially none, let's dive into the summary of the story itself, because this is actually a longer book, just like Glasslands was. So there's a lot to cover, but it's going to be a good time. So let's dive into it. So it basically does a quick recap of like, hey, last time on Dragon Ball Z, this is what you missed. So they do a quick recap of Glasslands, and then it picks up basically where it left off on Zanghelios with Phillips. So it's in the midst of that attack, and don't we think he almost dies because he gets, is it shrapnel goes into him or a bullet?
Well, so we learn from Glasslands, it's kind of like that cliffhanger where like everything is black because Kilo 5 loses any track of him because his communicator goes down, which has this segment of BB in it that was, one, supposed to track all the data that's coming in and out, but also two, if Phillips, who's not a trained soldier, he's a scholar, a scientist, a linguist, if he were to ever fall into like a wrong hands or start to get tortured, that little device would shoot him with poison, basically.
It's like cyanide pill, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much be like a little cyanide injection. So we're thinking, oh, did he get hit with that? What happened? So yeah, we end up learning that Philip survives it, and he's still disoriented. He's getting pulled around by a bunch of Sangheili that are around, because remember before, he got a note in an R-room from Telkam to come to the temple. Yeah, temple, place of worship, I guess you want to call it. And once he arrives there, we get that explosion. Well, turns out the Jiralhane, who were on Sanghelios, are rebelling as part of it. We're kind of seeing, but it also then kind of leads into the whole civil war between Thelvadam, who is the Arbiter's forces, versus Telkam's forces. And just like every kind of messy war, all these different fights break out over the planet.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Were the Brutes ever mentioned as being a part of this initially in Glasslands, or is this like a new development that we're learning in this book? I don't remember off the top of my head.
So I believe what was going to happen, I don't think they were really ever mentioned as being part of a distraction or anything of part of the war. I don't remember if it was Telkam spouting out stuff and I guess they overheard, or if they were just trying to overthrow what was happening, or if they were scapegoated to be a part of this. You get a little bit in the book, but it seems like both sides were then fighting the Jiralhane.
Yeah, and that was like one of the confusing parts about this, and it's a pretty straightforward book. This part I was a little confused about because I was trying to remember like everything that we learned in Glassland. So I was like, wait, I thought they were just like farm hands, kind of. Like I thought they were all cool.
I believe that this is what then brought, because we're going to learn that Kilo 5, who was not supposed to be part of this, they were supposed to be on that colony world, dealing with 010's, Spartan 010, her dad, they figured out they were supposed to be over there, but now that Phillips, they lost track of him and they lost track of obviously an AI, they don't want that to fall into enemy hands. They were going to be routed back. So I don't think it was planned on either side. I think it just happened to be serendipitous that occurred.
Yeah. But he gets, it's shrapnel or a bullet or something, and it hits his little BB, his little black box, and it saves his life. And that was one of those things I love that he mentions. He's like, this is something you see in movies. Like, that's not something that actually, happens. But so his life is saved from that. And eventually he's able to meet back up with Telcam. Or was he with Telcam the whole time?
He was with Telcam pretty much the whole time. So he was with remember that guy who was kind of walking him around? He's like, I need to go find that guy. I need to get back to the Arbiter. But Telcam's people were like, no. Because Telcam was there. Because he was like talking with him the last one. He's like, no, you're safer here.
Yeah, he's like, you can't go running out there. But then isn't Telcam also kind of suspicious of him? Because he's like, none of these bullets flew near you, even though he got hit with something at one point. He was like a little suspicious because he brings it up. He's like, why weren't you hitting it by anything? He's like, I don't know, man. Like,
well, they kind of brought it up and he brings up. So anyway, back to that recorder. So BB's in there. What turns out that shrapnel, even though this is an Oni designed thing, it could last, being crushed or being dropped, any of this stuff, it's gone and BB's not there. So we're definitely learning that he's blind and deaf from any Oni people that are out there. So he's on his own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's going with Telcam, and Telcam's like, listen, we need to start this. Like, we need to get our forces together. So he rallies his forces back to, his keep and back to the temple. And he's like, get the word out. It starts now. This is the perfect opportunity. Like, we've been stockpiling. We may not have everything we need. Because remember, their ships were still over at Undama's keep.
Their backyard.
Yeah, their backyard. So they're still keeping over there. So it starts off, and that's when Phillips is like, no, I got a thing. You guys do your thing, but I gotta go. And Telcam's like, listen, the party's about to pop. You can't, you literally can't leave.
Well, doesn't he then? They're in this keep, and it's near these Forerunner ruins. So it's like this weird thing. He's like, all right, well, since I'm here, can I just be nosy?
Well, yes, it's the temple. They're in the temple. Yeah, and in the temple, so he starts to notice Forerunner symbols and stuff kind of around him in this pristine temple, and he's asking around, like, can I go? Yeah, he said, can I go check this out? And Telcam basically says, yeah, but avoid all these areas that are marked off as hazardous. They block them off. They put some hazardy tape on them, and we're like, just don't go there. So he, along with this, he ends up getting a change of clothes. He's like, I need to do laundry. And Telcam's like, that's the biggest thing you're worried about right now is laundry. So he commands.
I mean, it's not his civil war.
You know what? That's true. He's just a passerby. And so they end up getting Sangheili children's clothes.
Yeah, I remember
that. And it's still kind of too big for him. So he's like tucking his pants and like wrapping around himself. And they give him a sling to make a diaper.
Incredible.
It's beautiful.
Incredible.
That's the image everybody needs right now. Just makeshift diapers. So he goes through exploring, figuring out these symbols and etching them down and like really trying to get BB back up or an idea on it.
Yeah, because it talks about how he's used to like snarky remarks coming in, but he doesn't get that anymore. So he truly does feel like alone right now.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't know if they're coming to save me or what's going to happen, but I have to figure out a way out of here.
But within the midst of exploring, he decides that he does need to at least see if there's anything to salvage from his shrapnel BB radio. So he does end up fixing BB, but it's not, it already is a fragment of him, but it's not like a fully restored. It's like a really vanilla version. Like there's no like sass or attitude with him. He's just kind of like, hi friend, I'm here.
Well, yeah, it's a failsafe. So it's basically deleted all data except for well-known data, I guess you would say.
And
so
like basic functions.
Yeah, so if it falls into enemy hands, it doesn't know the location of Earth. It doesn't know, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter now, but it doesn't know location of Earth again. and plenty of other like ONI secrets, UNSC secrets, but it still retains that he is an AI, doesn't know who Phillips is, but starts to kind of be like, okay, you're a UNSC. I'll work with you, I guess.
Yeah, and so that's when they decide, like, or BB decides, like, we need to actually figure, like, we need to make a map of here so we don't get lost. He's like, so go back, and we're going to start investigating within this cave. That way, I can tell you, okay, take a left here, and you get the hell out of here. And that's when, and I know you had brought this up before we started recording, is that he starts discovering symbols, Forerunner symbols, and glyphs for, like, the halos and transportation. And isn't it didact as well?
Yeah, so they're reading it as teacher, because I think because BB, like Fragment BB, still retains Halsey's findings on the Forerunners thus far. They had like the Dyson Sphere and back on Onyx, and it's using those. And I think BB's starting to interpret, like, no, she's kind of wrong on some of these things, right on some of them. But what we think is like circle or this, because I believe they thought it was halos when he was looking at it. But it turns out that these circles or whatever, when he's like pushing the wall and turning out like they were buttons, basically, that they were actually portals. And like those circles and stuff meant portals, because at first he thought he activated a halo. He's like, there's 7 of them? There's like 7 halos out there probably? Boop. And it's like, turns like red, and it's like, I just activated a halo.
Yeah, he thought it was like going to wipe out everything.
Yeah, and BB was like, well, they're probably smarter than that, and they probably have a failsafe that not just one person poking through a button would decimate the universe. But
yeah, well, it was interesting to find that the didact is mentioned. Because I remember when I was listening to this and I heard that, I perked up a little bit. I was like, okay, because I had that complaint about how like there was no real direction from the didact we knew in Primordium till Halo 4. So at least like you hear that name again and you're like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah, and they do at least set it up slightly for Halo 4 in this. Like, obviously, we're going to get a bit more in the 3rd book in both series, but at least give something at the end of this.
Yeah, you at least kind of have an idea.
Yeah, and so Phillips goes through this. He has to leave again and bumbles around, talks to some of the Sangheili that are there. All the while, we're back over with Kilo 5, and that's when they're like, all right, guys, we got to pull out. And they were talking with Mike Spencer, who was their contact on that colony world. And they're like, we got to pull out. He's like, all right, wait, you do what you got to do. I'm going to be here just pretending to be an electrician.
Yeah, that is what he is, right? Electrician? Yeah. Hey, we still need electricians in 2557. I don't know what year this is. I can't remember.
You always need them. So they pull out, they rendezvous, they touch base with Parangowski, saying, hey, we're going to go do this. She's like, go, get Phillips out. First of all, recover BB, but get Phillips out, I guess, if we have to. And they're all worrying about him and we get a little bit more into the relationship, quote unquote, between Dev and Phillips, because Mal kind of gives her fatherly Russianiness. No, it's fast. And gives her this kind of dad, like, oh, I can see there's something more going on. You're kind of worried about him. So we still get this like fledgling relationship going with it. And they go zoom, 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 scoot, scoot, back to Sanghelios.
Yeah, and doesn't it focus more on Parangowski at this point? Because isn't she on the Infinity, or she's going to check out the Infinity?
Yes. So yeah, she's crewing up with them, really showing off the ship, which is really cool, showing that it's like 30 kilometers long.
You have to take a cart everywhere.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You can't walk.
Walking would take you a day to get through the ship.
Yeah.
So she kind of talks about that. And this is kind of cool because we do get so much more from like OG Parangowski, who just seemed like this Oni kind of spook and didn't really know much. Now we're actually getting a lot more about her life and who she is and who she trusts and
interactions between her and other people. And you see that she has like this weird, it's not weird, but her and Lord Hood have this like respect for one another. And I think Hood knows it as well, that she's doing things behind his back, because you see that they don't argue, but they have like their disagreements about it.
I think they're both masterful tacticians, and because the Infinity, because of the budget, you can't hide the largest budget ship of all time. It had to be partnered with the Admiral so that you'd have the full fleet. It was like, oh, this is UNSC and Oni joining sides, type thing. So they're both the captain of the ship trying to steer it in two ways.
Yeah, and we also meet Del Rio and Thomas Lasky as well, and Del Rio is kind of, I don't want to say he's like a coward, but they say that anytime that Parangowski shows up, he like ditches. He's like, I'm out of here.
Well, she kind of talks about it too. She's like, a captain needs respect. He is not in that terms at all. She's like, I think he knows his place, but he's not someone you would want to sail under, I guess, in a way.
But then she also, like, whenever she talks about Lasky, she talks very fondly of him. She's like, he's going to go somewhere. I really like this guy. He's going to go somewhere. And if like, we're familiar with Halo 4, so we're like, really, like, we know now what they're clearly leading to.
Yeah.
But it was, like, cool to see that make its way into the book. But yeah, and so eventually, in order for Kilo 5 to get onto Zanghelios, Hood has to ask the Arbiter, like, hey, can our guys come onto your planet and save our guy? Like, basically saying it, like, listen, like, it would suck if he died by your men's hands in some kind of crossfire. He made it some kind of, like, honor thing. And
where it's like, let us handle our people, you handle your people, and we won't cross paths.
That was a damn lie, but still.
But still, it also gave them an excuse to say, okay, well, this is actually the perfect opportunity and flex some muscle over Sanghelios, even if it's not firing a shot, it's just, check out our dick. Dick measuring competition, we're going to win here. And that's pretty much what they're trying to do, is trying to intimidate, because they've blasted, after the Great Schism, and obviously after, the Human Covenant War, the Sangheili and Sanghelios have been hit hard. And now with this Oni-sponsored civil war starting up, they really don't have much.
Yeah, and I think that's also, like, I think that they were under the impression that humanity wasn't doing too well either, but they didn't realize, because at some point in the book, it's like a big reveal that, like, everyone sees the ship, and they're like, where did they get that? But then moving on from that, now we're finally seeing Jewel again. Because remember, he got kidnapped at the very end of Glasslands, and now he is on where Onyx is, or whatever it's called now.
Kurt's last name planet.
Yeah, like, don't quote us on that. But so he's
Trevelyan. That's what it is. Trevelyan.
Trevelyan. Okay.
I knew it was like Alex Trebek. That's how I remembered it. Alex Trevelyan. There you go. Kurt Trevelyan.
Yep. But so he's, I don't know if I want to call them interrogations, but one of the scientists keeps coming in and continually talks to him.
Yeah, it's Irina Magnuson. So she's the head researcher, I guess.
Scientist, yeah, whatever. She's
so
head person.
Yeah. So Parangowski put her in charge, and are basically using Jewel as a science experiment. So it's definitely psychological, emotional torture in a way that he doesn't understand. Because she comes in and she acts very interested in Sangheili culture, actually asks how he's doing. Like, is there legit anything we can do for you? You're on this, you're stuck on this planet. There's not much, you can't leave. So we might as well be civil with each other and hang out.
And throughout these conversations, Jewel is definitely, you can see he's kind of getting stir crazy, but he's already told himself that he's going to escape, whether it takes weeks or years. And throughout the book, it kind of jumps back, but throughout these, like, meetings that he's having, he's kind of trying to pick up on the English language. He's trying to figure out how to read the English language and all this stuff, because, as I said, he wants to get out, and he doesn't know if it's going to take weeks or years, but he's like, there's no way in hell I can die here.
Yeah, he tries to pick up and use the human's best weapon of, like, deception and lying. He's like, humans just do it all the time. Especially when they bare their teeth, but in a sign of, like, happiness greeting. He's like, I don't understand why things do that.
He basically said every time she smiled, she was lying.
Yeah.
Essentially. Like, he's like, oh, that's how I know that was a lie, because she just smiled at me. And it was also crazy as how casual everyone was around him. Like, the guards didn't really pay any, like, the guards weren't on edge with him. Like, it even described, like, the guards were just kind of like, meh.
Yeah,
like,
they're like at the ready, but like at ease between, I guess, at attention.
Yeah, they said they never looked at him. They would just look off in the distance. But eventually, this might be jumping ahead a little bit, he does get kind of some free roam rights.
Yeah, so as they have a couple meetings, she asks because she's trying to do this in a way where asking about Sanghelios and what is his diet. And he reveals that he's like, well, this is the grain I would eat. This is the meat that we would eat. Because he was eating, from like the study that Phillips had and a couple other studies, they were trying to like figure out a diet that worked for him. Mm-hmm. And the current diet, quote, gave him gas. And he's like, but is there anything else you have? She's like, we can get you that grain and we can get you those colos, which is the animal they receive all this meat from. We'll bring him here. Mm-hmm. And he's like, that's going to take seasons. It's going to take this, and that. And yeah, like you said, she eventually is like, we can get you out of here, but you gotta promise me a couple things. You gotta promise me your best behavior. You gotta promise to go to these certain sites. Also, here's a collar that you used to put on the Hurugok that we're gonna put on you.
Yeah, and it's actually put on by a Hurugok itself. Mm-hmm. So it's like kind of crazy to see. And that thing's brought in later, and that's us jumping ahead a little bit. And to jump ahead since we're already ahead, I know at one point he's allowed out because they said he just started he was like walking paces in his room, and eventually he was doing it so much, presumably it made him pass out and like throw up and whatnot. So like him walking around in his cell so much made him sick. So that's when they kind of had the conversation like, we'll let you out for a little bit, but we have these parameters. But that is us kind of jumping ahead just a little bit. But oh well.
We then leave Jewel, and then we go back with Kilo 5, who has finally been granted-ish access to land.
Like, keep your hands off of stuff while you're down here.
Yeah, and so out of the Port Stanley, they take Devereaux's Pelican, the Tart Cart, to Antom, so they can find Phillips.
Just all these names at once. Port Stanley, Tart Cart, Ancom.
Tart Cart's great. So they arrive, and they see the temple is under attack by Jiralhanae forces. Mm-hmm. So they do what they can, and they basically throw Naomi down and like, do your thing.
Do your thing and let her do it. It's this parts like this, whenever it shows, and it's always specifically brutes, how quickly she takes them out. It makes me think back to First Strike, when Chief encounters one brute, and it's this like long scene. But then when you have Naomi, it's like she just mows through them like it's nothing.
Well, yeah, Chief's garbage. And you have to figure it's been some time, so these aren't all these like probably fully kitted out Jiralhanae.
Well, she does have like the Mark 7 as well, makes her more powerful.
Yeah, so there's plenty with that, but yeah, they get on it, and then as they're kind of going through this battle, they're fighting the Jiralhanae and trying to take them down, but just instinctually, the Sangheili that are there see these humans and start to kind of take pot shots at them and fight, because like it's war again, because I know that Naomi, and they talk about how like fast she is. She covers like all this yardage in like seconds, and it was like 60 kilometers an hour or something like that she was like sprinting. And so she makes it across, lays down some cover fire, and gets everybody towards the temple, and they eventually make their way in, seal that front door.
But yeah, and then they kind of run into this metaphorical brick wall when they're trying to get into the temple, because it's like a sacred temple. And there's a bunch of elites who are like totally against them going inside. They're like, no, our pal was in here. We know he was in here. We need to go in there. And then they're kind of having a standoff with them. And then there's just one elite at the control panel in the temple. And it's just, he's just kind of there.
Well, yeah, because they when they're at the front, Naomi like slams forward and seals the door. And they're kind of listening. They realize they're getting more restless outside because these are kind of interlopers in their sacred sanctuary, and humans aren't supposed to touch it. But they're also like fighting with, should we just get them Phillips out and deal with this? So they're kind of murmuring outside, starting to cause a ruckus.
Well, isn't there this internal debate about if they can kill in the temple or not as well?
And that's exactly it. They're like, and I love that the humans are kind of talking about it, like, and that's like their debate is like where to kill, even though they're going to kill type thing.
Yeah, it's like, because is it can we kill on sacred grounds? Like, are we heretics if we do that? So they're just like, let them debate that.
Yeah,
that's their call.
Let's do our thing. So they go in, they find that one dude just chilling there, and they like start to raise weapons. He's like, what do you want?
It's always a cliche thing of the guy at the control panel that puts his hands up instantly. He's like, okay, what?
Yeah, he's like, I'm just working here. And so they're like, we're here for Phillips. And he's like, well, he went down like that corridor like some hours ago. We haven't seen him. And it's not that long of a corridor. So I don't really know what he's doing.
I love that they just kind of stopped keeping tracks. At first, like, no, you need to be safe. And then later on, there's like, whatever. Do whatever you want.
Well, it's better than babysitting him during like this fight.
Yeah, true.
So they start to make their way down the corridor, and we learn that BB has smell-o-vision because he's in Naomi right now, in her neural implant. And because we learned earlier that Phillips relieves himself in one of the hallways, and the smell-o-vision that BB has been tracking that.
It's like from the Batman Arkham games. It's like the same technology.
Exactly. Tracking a big old dump down the hallway. And they make their way, and they're like, he's not here. Like, his trail goes cold after
His
that.
poop is here, but he is not here.
He has left some behind, but his full body is gone. And we happen to learn that Phillips was able to half accidentally, half really go through a portal. And we see that he has now been transported to possibly still Sangheili at the time. Like, we don't really know.
He's in a field, right? Like, he comes to in like a field.
Yeah, and I believe we're trying, or I guess saying that it's also, a field of that Irukan, which is that same grain that Jewel talks about. Like, that's his grain, and that was grown by the Kig-Yar, but now it's a staple on Sangheili.
Yeah.
And so I believe he lands in that, and he notices this ruffle that's going through it. Ruffles in the ridges. Trademark. And and it's funny because like him and this BB are having this inner monologue, and like even in his own mind about like, oh, it's probably just like some animal fluffing through. It's like, no, or an animal with its head down. It's like a small animal with a head. Will say like, this is my fight or flight. Like, it's getting close enough, and I'm gonna die.
Does he grab a stick or something? If I'm correct,
yeah, he grabs like a big stick, and he's like, all I can do is whack at him.
He's basically like, I have one shot to hit it in the head.
Yeah. And then, but out come these like three bumbling grunts. And he kind of gets scared because I don't think he's seen a grunt before.
I think this is the first time he's seen one in person.
Yeah, they see one in person because he actually like realizes the methane tank and the methane rebreather, and he's like, ooh.
And you got to realize that, like, and I didn't realize this for a long time, is that grunts are like 5 foot to 5'5". So there are grunts taller than me, even though in the game they seem like 3 foot.
They're all pretty big, yeah.
Yeah. So like grunts are actually, even coming up to someone who's 6 foot, still bigger than what you would expect. So he's probably intimidated by that alone.
Yeah, he was playing Halo 1 through 3 and sees that they're tiny, and then sees them here.
And now he's getting ready to play Halo 4. He's like, this just doesn't make sense. Why did the art style change?
It's all his fault. So we kind of cut off there. And then we jump back over to this goddamn fucking church that dings its bell all the time. And then we jump back to Kilo 5. And they're like, all right, well, we got to piece out of here. However, that crowd has swelled a lot.
They said there was like 70 or 80 out there. It's all elites, and it's like 5 humans.
Yeah, and they're like, well, and they are getting pretty pissed off, so we should probably skedaddle as quickly as we can.
How did they make their way out of there? Did they sneak out?
Firefight.
Okay, yeah. I completely forgot, yeah. Well, it's because in these books, I will say, Karen Traviss is a great writer, but a lot of fight sequences, and you and I have talked about this, especially space battles, are kind of, I'd say, the least interesting part about these books. It's the dialogue and the character development is what I really like about these books. And then the firefights and everything are just whatever. Yeah,
and so they make their way through, they jump onto the Pelican, they escape out, and they're like, okay, we need to regroup. We need to figure out Phillips. Let's see if BB has somehow come in contact with him again, because BB is obviously like trying as much as he can, like doing planetary scans and, all these different things.
Regular BB, right?
Yeah. OGBB goes for all this. And so unfortunately we don't know what's going on. But we then jump back to Raya, who we met a little bit in the first book.
Jewel's wife.
And that was Jewel's wife, correct. And we jump back to Raya. And so she's kind of fed up with like not hearing back from her husband, because she's like, if he had switched to the Arbiter's side, he probably would have told me, or he would have told me he's leaving the planet, or he would have said something at this point. Because this was weeks, right?
Yeah, I believe so. It definitely longer than just days.
Yeah, because she says sometimes he would leave for days, and it's understandable. But now I think it's 2 weeks. I think they said.
And that was even during the war and everything. But there was essentially no reason to do it as of right now, with no explanation.
So she's like, all right, I know that Telcam is going to come back here for his ships. So I'll confront him then. And so she kind of goes out and she talks with, I believe it is Forza.
Forza.
No, Forza the game. She actually plays it on the Xbox. Goes with Forza and is like, I have to do this. She like grabs a pistol and goes down to the docks. And he's like, no. Kind of like this isn't a woman's place type deal because there's still this very patriarchal society in a way.
Well, yeah, it's like the women rule the home. But it's also this weird thing that the men are the warriors, but at the beginning of Glasslands, there was no war. So technically the women were the hierarchy. But now that there's kind of a war, they're kind of like being quote unquote put back into their place in the home.
Yeah, but since Jewel's gone, she now assumes the right to lead their people.
Yeah, that keep.
That keep specifically. So she goes down to the dock. She got like a pistol drawn waiting for him. And that's when Forza the game and Forza go down and like realize that she's not backing down. So like, all right, I'm joining you. And then I think some of the younger Sangheili come down as well, and they join her, like drawing guns and sticks and everything. Like, we're going to take him out.
With sticks.
And then finally, Telkim arrives, and Raya doesn't back down. She's holding that pistol leveled at him, and he's like, what is going on? And she asks, Jewel was with you last. Like, what did you do with him? And he's like, well, I haven't seen him. I assume he went to the Arbiter. And that's when she gets back to him, like, no, he would have told me if he switched sides. Like, we're in it together. We were just kind of picking sides to pick sides. Where is he? So they both kind of be like, well, the last we know of, he was coming to my meeting place. And I guess in her mind, in both minds, like, maybe the humans?
Maybe.
So she demands, she's like, let me on your ship. I'm flying with you.
Yeah.
And I do really like her character. I like that she's like, she takes no crap from him. And we see that going on because she'll have these conversations about, you know, we need to change the way the caste system works. I want to be a swordmaster. And he brings up, no, there haven't been. She's, yes, there has. There's been female swordmasters. And I think one other Sangheili chimes up is like, yeah, one. And she's like, okay, well, that sets the precedent. Like, there was one. Why can't we change that way that was?
Kind of sounds like the plot to Mulan. What's going on here?
Pretty much. So she gets in the ship. They go out and they basically go and try and deal with some of the Arbiter's forces. And when you're heading out to, you know, deal with a squadron, one, what are some things you need? One, you need snacks.
Yeah, you need snacks. You need a blankie.
You always need that for a good space trip. But most of all, you need something to entertain yourself. And what do they need? They need some Audible in their lives.
Exactly.
And so thank you, Audible, for sponsoring today's episode. As always, Audible is an amazing platform where you can access hundreds of thousands of different audio programs, including all of the books that we have done thus far, including the ones in the future. I'm starting to listen to a lot more. I'm trying to get through Game of Thrones right now. We'll see how that goes.
Godspeed, my friend.
Thank you. Just don't watch the show. But aside from that, Audible's amazing. They've been sponsoring us throughout this almost the whole podcast life we've had, which has been awesome. And you can download your free audiobook today at audibletrial.com/finishthefight and snap up that free book. Like we said, it's helped us immensely with this. Hopefully it helps you. So again, that's audibletrial.com/finishthefight for your free audiobook today.
Yeah, but then this is kind of where the narrative changes, and now we're with Phillips once more. And so he's talking to those grunts who, for the most part, are represented how grunts are represented. They're kind of dumb. These ones are cursing a lot for some reason.
Yeah.
But oh well.
They're like sailor mouth grunts, which is great. And they hate the Arbiter and like the whole keep because like they're terrible people.
Yeah, and they're basically just like farmhands there too. And he's just like, you got to take me to whoever's in charge here. So they do that. And once he gets to this keep, he realizes it's all female Sangheili. And because all their husbands and able-bodied elites are all fighting right now.
Yeah, because it's just wives and children right now.
Yeah, and so what we find out is that there's this rival clan or guy, I can't remember.
Yeah, it's like a rival clan. So it's Karen Travis does really well in writing, like we said, like pretty chaotic war aspects of this book, because this kind of talks about how wars are also just the time of opportunity. So another clan is trying to take over their lands. It has nothing to do with the arbiter, like abiding truth type war. It has to do with just, we want your lands right now.
Yeah, so she's like, the head honcho is telling Phillips, like, we're preparing for this battle right now. Like, we can't really help you out. We're just preparing for this. And so eventually he gets part of it as well. So he has a plasma pistol, which they describe that like he needs to hold with like two hands. 'Cause it's so big.
Yeah, because the elite that's running this, Elar Nas, she's kind of directing him like, okay, there's incoming fire. Like, we have to hunker down. Stop looking out the window. Let's do this. And so I don't remember the number of them, but it's like 6 or 7 start to break down the door. And Phillips just stares straight ahead and just like keeps pulling the trigger at the door and just vaporizes everything. And obviously staring at it, it's like a bright blast of plasma. He's like seeing like those red dots in his eyes and can't really see anything. And he only stops firing when she like grabs him on the shoulder. She's like, it's over. They're dead. And was it this time or later in the book that Phillips brings up like, this is the most, or later in the book when he gets rescued, like this is the most he's ever been alive.
He had talked about like this being in this war. He's like, I feel like a new person.
Yeah, he's like, I've never felt this. And later, I think it's Vaz kind of brings up like, oh, he's got that kind of like fight or flight. You're using every bit of your body possible, even past like what you thought was your threshold. And he's like, he can easily become an ODST. Like he has that mentality of it. He has like the bravado and like that raw, like just craving for.
Yeah. Well, is this a different firefight almost happens, right? Because that's when Kilo 5 shows up and they're like, okay, we're going to take Phillips. But before that, these Sangheili were like, wait, like Phillips is like, okay, cool guys. I'm going to go now. They're like, wait, you're a hostage now.
Well, to roll it back a little bit, they had already called Telcam. Because that's where we had received the report earlier when they're leaving their ship, is because Phillips is like, all right, they're either with Telcam or they're with the Arbiter. So I have to play it on either side. I can't really tell. And yeah, that's when Nas is like, no. We're calling Telcam. Like, we get this bounty reward.
Yeah, because he's supposed to go back to Telcam and then go back to the humans. But Kilo 5's like, listen, let's just cut out the whole Telcam thing and just come with us. But they're like, no. He has to go with Telcam. So there's this weird standoff when they show up.
Yeah, and then Phillips tries to be the intermediator because he's like, listen, guys, just chill. We need to figure this out diplomatically. I'm okay. I'm unscathed. I did shoot a bunch of stuff, which is really cool. But at that same time, you have Naomi, Vaz, and Mal were all making their way towards the front door. And at this point, I love that they talk about Naomi. She just like, because they put barriers up. They had to like seal the door back up. She just punches a hole through like a Shining Here's Johnny and then just rips it all out. Guns are drawn everywhere. But Phillips is standing between everybody saying, all right, guys, just chill. Like, we don't need to fire on this. Women and children. But I know that Vaz and Mal were kind of be like, listen, they murdered our women and children as well. Like, this is war.
Yeah. He definitely is coming from a place as well as like compassion for the elites because he spent all his life studying them. So now he's like, no, I get it. I see everything from their point of view kind of as well. He's just truly trying to be a middleman and being like, we're both just beings trying to get by at this point.
But unfortunately, while this is happening, they finally say, all right, Phillips, you're coming. He goes, all right. Gunfire starts because earlier we see that there's some banshees in the distance. And a couple of them got shot down, and now there's more coming in, laying fire, and we have a group from that rival keep, I guess, that are coming to attack again. So they have to jump in, board it back up, and these, Kilo 5 now has to fight with these like random hodgepodge elites.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Then and afterwards, they take out all the banshees and whatnot, and the rest of that rival keep, but their Pelican is damaged in the process, so they have to. Well, Telcam arrives by then, right?
Because he also helps shoot down some of those banshees and kind of wipe out the rest of that crowd and kind of gets everybody to disperse.
And Jules' wife is there as well. And isn't there this weird tension that they like know they're like, oh God, that's his wife. And like, we kidnapped the dude and she's looking for him. So it's kind of like awkward. So they just kind of put their head down. But there's still tension between the elites and the humans, but yet they're like, hey, can you like help us repair this ship? Because we don't have anywhere else to go. And I think he's kind of like, all right, like, since you had this weird deal with the Arbiter, I guess I'll help you.
Yeah, because Forza, I remember, was the first to arrive, and he's the one who kind of fired it down, because Telcam had told Forza that, Forza, whatever car or not, that you need to go get Phillips. Like, he's in distress. But then that's when Forza is like, hey, Telcam, it's a little different. There's some humans here. So Telcam comes. They convince Telcam, like, listen, we're just going to take Phillips. That way you don't have to have him on your hands. We don't have to worry about any of this. We're going to be good to go. So they agree upon that. Raya and then Forza actually do help, like, put some Band-Aids on the Pelican on the Tart cart.
Yeah, or like that weird specific wiring they talk about in the book. Don't quote us on what it is. I don't remember. 50 millimeter.
So yeah, they slap wiring. They put all these different, because they needed the gauge of it. It was like 50 or 75 millimeter gauge wire they needed with it to repair it, get it running again, kiss the boo-boos.
Thank God that we use the same wiring system as them.
Yeah, exactly. And they're able to put it together, because obviously we had Huragok, we'd be fine, but both were just kind of like fumbling around getting it to go. But it's enough to get it back out towards Port Stanley and to safety.
Yeah. But now that everyone is, for the most part, fine, and Kilo 5 makes it out of there, so then now let's go back to Jewel. So Jewel is starting to actually walk around. You know, we had said we had jumped ahead a little earlier. Now we're here. So Jewel's able to walk around the planet, and for the most part, he has freedom. Like, he just has to be... the Huragok has to follow him around, essentially. And so he wants to investigate some of these Forerunner ruins or caves or whatnot, because he's just really curious in that. Plus, he's still convinced that there might be a way that he can get out of here.
Yeah, because he's saying that, you know, there's only so many humans on this planet. They're all like driving little buggy cars, stuff like that. There's no real ships coming in, so all the supplies has to be local. So where's all this stuff kind of coming from? And they had told him that the grain and the animals that should have took seasons only took, was it hours?
Yeah, I think so.
And I think that she ended up explaining that it's a time differential. Like, through the Dyson sphere, they're able to grow all this stuff and then bring it back real quick. And so he's kind of figuring, okay, if the Furners had like time manipulation, what else could they have? And so that's when he starts exploring through these ruins and writing down these etching symbols on his belt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So he kind of has like this cool like championship wrestling belt by the end of it.
Yeah, it's definitely like the People's Champion belt. And he's going through it. And at one point, the way she describes it is like he feels like kind of like cobwebs over his face, and then he's in a different place.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like he's throughout the book, you see that he's kind of doing this detective work because he's really smart elite. So he's doing all these things to try to figure out, how can I get out of here?
Well, and the other reason that he's able to explore all these temples is he keeps feigning that he's a very devout religious elite. He's like, oh, the gods.
Yeah,
and he keeps bringing it up to try and fool the humans that he's a regular, run-of-the-mill elite. But in reality, he doesn't believe in it, but he believes that there is great power.
Yeah, so that's kind of his, ticket to try to get out of there. So he thinks. And I know at one point, this is where, isn't it, we start to learn a little bit more about like the Didact, because he's seeing some symbols, and the Huragok is like, I haven't heard much about that guy in about 100,000 years, but he's not a fan of humans. So we just kind of let him be. He's on this place called Requiem. We don't know where it is. We're not told where it is, so we don't worry about that. But Jewel's kind of like, he doesn't like humans. I don't like humans. Me and this guy, we got a lot in common.
We're best friends
We got
already.
a lot in common. But isn't it at one point, he goes to touch something on a wall, and the Huragok actually like throws him against a wall because the Huragok freaks out and it's like, you can't do that. And Jewel said any other time he would have like attacked whatever threw him, but he's like, I can't believe that this thing just threw me.
Yeah, and because he was going towards a panel, which I assume, as the way it's described, is a similar panel to what Phillips had touched on Sangheili. So it's a teleportation panel. And yeah, I love the description that the Huragok grabbed and threw him so hard it ripped tendons in Jewel. And so they're kind of talking about, this is just a meat machine that the foreigners made, but obviously they made them so that they can protect what they're doing.
Yeah, in case they need to. And that's kind of the end of, like, an awkward end to that meeting.
Well, and I love it because it's cute, because the Huragok says, I hope you're not harmed. I did not mean to harm you, but I had to do that.
He said that if you would have touched that, then you would, like, he said, like, you would have been worse off, essentially. Like, this was the best option.
Yeah, because it's explained later that what he was going to touch, obviously, is a portal button. It's labeled P1. Tap that P1 to use that portal one. But the Huragok explains, listen, I was kind of the helmsmaster of this. Well, I'm not at the helm, so I don't know where these portals go.
Yeah, so he's like, I don't know where you would end up, so this was me saving your life. And I don't know if it's now or later on, that the harness that he has, he keeps, like, kind of rubbing at it, and he convinces the Huragok to just loosen it up a little bit. He's like, don't take it off, but he's like, his
straps
hurts.
are rubbing on me hard. And
yeah.
And so, so then he says, I think at that point it's loose enough to take over his head, but obviously it would explode. And we'll get back to that. And to kind of end this, to go a little bit back in Jewel's story, they eventually changed his diet out, and they gave him that Iroquois, whatever it was, grain and the cola meat. And the next day he's sick. He's feeling sick, throwing up, feeling awful, and he can't eat for like 2 days. Well, through some Parangoski notes that we see, and through notes from the doctor that's there, they were actually tempering with that grain to make it unedible or inedible, so that they could eventually spread those spores across Sangheili.
Cross-pollinate the natural grain there.
Yeah, because apparently it would become so invasive that I think it was only like X number, like small number of years. I think it was like 3 or 4 years. Or was it 6 months? I'll have to look it up. But it was a super short amount of time that it could completely take over and cause famine.
Yeah, because they wouldn't be able to eat it. It's literally like the potato famine, almost. Like they were just going to starve them to death because they can't eat anything else.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what they were using him for. And he does kind of get that later, because he's talking to the Huragok. He asks, like, why were those colos? Because there was, like, plump, delicious colos and then sickly ones. And he asks, why were those colos separated? What happened to them? And the Huragok says, well, I mean, they died.
Mission success.
Yeah, he's like they died, on purpose. And at the time, Jules was thinking, oh, for meat, like they're stockpiling meat for me, but I'm going to be gone, not realizing that they died from malnutrition and starvation.
Yeah.
Now back over to Sangheili, we have the big old ship of Infinity come right in within 1 kilometer of their destination, right above Sangheili. So they were really wanting to test out, because I think Parangoski and Hood kind of talked it back and forth, and they were like, I mean, this gives us the chance to really test this ship. I know it's still prototype-ish, but let's test it out.
Well, Parangoski was anxious to anyways. She's been wanting to.
She's been wanting to, because this has been like a pet project. She wants to get going. And so they use a lot. So basically the whole ship, if you guys don't know what Infinity is, it's kind of like this Frankenstein's monster Forerunner tech.
Well, also, and this is something that we kind of need to mention, is that it was a pretty good ship, but then when they brought Huragok in, it changed everything.
It fully updated everything. They were able to integrate so much more of that Forerunner tech, because they were able to get some of those OG Huragok from Onyx. They're like the children of those ones that were already there. So they're basically Forerunner Huragok.
Yeah.
So they're working on this machinery perfect, integrating it. They were able to get comms through slipspace, which has never happened before. Typically, you were in the dark until you exited slipspace.
Yeah.
But now they're able to do comms through slipspace. They're able to get within 1 kilometer of their destination. And being a 30K ship, like, you got to kind of figure out where your kilometers are going to be. Otherwise, you're going to be right in that planet. And so they go right above. And at this point, we kind of have another chat with Parangoski and Osmond, and this allows Port Stanley to dock with the Infinity and to kind of come on board, get some R&R, talk with Phillips about integrating his little black box, his little broken black box, to be with the actual BB. and to like get all that data down.
Yeah. Well, doesn't BB also, regular BB, not vanilla BB, kind of almost show like nervousness? Like he's almost kind of like not bothered, but like kind of like nervous about like having to like communicate with this old version of himself and integrate himself back. It's this weird thing where it shows like the human side to the AI. And then also moving on from that, we do, and this is the only time, if I'm correct, BB goes and talks to Halsey. Because Blue Team and Mendez are not in this book whatsoever. I don't even think they're mentioned other than a quick recap in the beginning. Like they're nowhere to be found.
They're not.
Halsey is mentioned a few times up to this point where she's clutching like a photo of Miranda and crying. Basically, that's all you hear of her. She's legally dead, so she's just working on the Infinity, and that's it.
Well, I think that was really cool scene for me too, because I believe BB. So BB's kind of having this existential crisis because he's coming close to rampancy. And so he does this really cool like zoom back where he's like, yeah, Parangowski's enjoying this. So-and-so's talking to them. Halsey's crying and holding a picture of her daughter. He's like, I see all, like, I know everything that's going on. And that's when he kind of be like, well, Halsey's probably the best to help me and fix me. Because even though I think he's a Gen 4 and then and Cortana's a Gen 3, he's like, I've never dealt with, she's never dealt with me, but she's like the parent of an AI. She'll know what to do.
Yeah, he goes in and he talks to her, and he kind of he almost bluffs and says, I'm 4th gen, which surprises her. Goes, yeah, I'm an AI made by AI. And he starts to read her face, and he realizes she can't fix me. So he just kind of leaves. And he even admits, like, yeah, that whole being made by another AI thing was just a bluff. I'm just trying to see if she was surprised by that or not. And seeing that she was surprised, it's very obvious she cannot help me.
Yeah.
So kind of interesting there where he's talking to Halsey. And again, that's the only time we also ever see her as well. So it's like she was a huge part of that first book, and so was Blue Team. And then now they're not in this book at all. And it is kind of sad that it's like it mentions multiple times that she's just, it's like, yeah, there's Halsey crying because her daughter's dead and she wasn't there and she didn't know about it for a long time.
Yeah, and we're getting to like really interesting character development too. Like definitely read the book because we really can't emphasize enough like what some of these characters are going through.
Yeah.
Especially when we start to get with Osmond and kind of what she's going through and like her own personal deals, and especially as we start to get with Naomi and like dealing with her father and like getting those ideas up. It's a really, really awesome way the team builds. And I think Travis did a huge, amazing job putting it together. And so we'll start to see a lot more of that come through. But we're back now, and this is where Parangowski tells, Osmond, she comes over to the ship and she requires adjustment and leaks repaired to upgrade Port Stanley.
Well, because I remember, sorry, she Parangowski, to show this like mother-daughter relationship, she says multiple times like, I think Osmond needs this. Like, I think she's really gonna like this. Almost like excited to give like her daughter a present. She's like, she's really gonna like this. I think she could use this.
Yeah, and she's like, she's gonna succeed me. Like, we need to like be on the same terms. So yeah, she takes him down, and at the same time, while these upgrades are going on, Hood wants to kind of flex the Infinity, but also gets in touch with the Arbiter and is like, hey, you need some help, buddy? And the Arbiter's like, no, I'm good. He's like, all right, cool, here's a Mac round.
That's basically it. He's like, no. He's like, dude, you got like 3 boots up your ass right now. Like, you sure you don't need help? He's like, no, I'm good. He's like, we're going to help you. We're going to help you.
So they fire a Mac round, takes out a bunch of the rebel ships that were like encroaching on the Arbiter's position. The Arbiter begrudgingly like gives him kind of like a thanks. And but that's when Parangowski's like, ooh, hey, Osmond, I need you to get Telcam. Because Hood has no idea that we started this revolution, and Telcam needs to live if we're going to keep pushing it.
Yeah, because there's no point. Like, it takes a long time to get one person or one Sangheili to stand up, so they got to make sure that mastermind, quote unquote mastermind, is alive.
So after they get their ship upgraded with slip space, which has never been happening on a small ship like that, and this updated comms, which is like a 3D super dense map that you can actually see what's going on. It's not just topography, it's like all these little dots you can see as well. So they end up dropping back down to the planet. our sweet tart cart, our pelican, drops back down, and they're going to quote unquote rescue Telcam.
Doesn't that kind of go south though?
So they basically take out some of his forces, and they quote unquote rescue him and take him quote unquote rescued basically across the planet slightly, and they go over to New Lanelli, which is where his forces are kind of getting together again. And he's like, you guys, we're gonna drop you off. You need to figure your stuff out and get out of here.
Yeah.
Like we can't control what the UNSC is doing up there. Like, we're just here for you right now. You need to get out because we cannot predict what's going to happen.
Yeah, because essentially, like, this war is going on, and, like, half of the guys up there are unaware that we're kind of working with you. So, like, you are potentially going to be caught in the crossfire. So, get out of here. Get out of here.
And it's great, too, because I think Raya's the one who asked Telcam, why are we working with these vermin humans? Like, why don't we just shoot them down? They couldn't have as many ships. And Telcam goes, you... Just wait.
They got one. That's all that matters.
You'll see. And I love that line too, because he kind of is like, no, I get what you're saying, but this is the biggest ship I've ever seen in my entire life. So let's just do what they say. Yeah. So as we get these conversations going, they start to retreat, and BB and Osmond devise this plan that they're along with those upgrades from those Huragok, they are completely untraceable on any nav stats or anything like that. So they're a ghost ship right now, and BB gets on, and with the help of translation with Osmond, they disguise themselves as a Kigyar mistress, and they use the name, I think it's Laz, and they basically say that, we procured some UNSC nukes, and I think they were trying to say that, they were from this segment that kind of knew about this ship that they were supposed to be getting, that these other Kigyars were supposed to deliver. And Osmond, as Laz, plays it up. She ends up shooting down, I think, 3 of the pursuers from the Arbiter's forces to save them. And only Telcam knows that it's not the Kigyar. Because I think it's Forze pops on. He's like, who is this? Who is, like, I'm Kigyar, doo-doo-doo. But then he's like, give me Telcam. And Telcam's like, who? He's like, that's Osmond. He's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's such this weird smoke and mirrors thing going on. Yeah, so within the midst of that, but unfortunately, even though Osmond and BB are trying to defend Forze and Raya, the Arbiter's forces shoot down Forze and Raya.
Well, yeah, so they had, I think, a total of 5 ships. 1 ship immediately got hit. Then the quote-unquote Kigyar got involved. Took out most of them, but I think 1 or 2 survived from the Arbiter's forces, taking out the rear ship, which was the ship that Forze and Raya were on, leaving only 3 of 5 to survive.
Yeah, so they're taken out, and I don't think it says what happens to them just yet. It just says, like, the ship goes down, and then it kind of moves on from there. But yeah, so the Port Stanley picks up Kilo 5, and then kind of move on from that portion of the story.
Well, yeah, because Port Stanley had just got that slip drive, so they were able to jump immediately to New Lanelli, grab Kilo 5, who was in Tart Cart, pretending to be the Kigyar, and we're able to get them out of there and zoom back towards Trevelyan.
Yeah, so from there, I think that's when Phillips actually goes and talks with Jewel just for a little bit. But yeah, so they have a quick conversation. And since they're still trying to play the whole, is there anything we can do with you? You fine? You want you want new sheets, anything like that? So is there anything I can do for you? And Jewel says, can you check on my wife? Can you make sure she's fine? And this is kind of like that tragic thing, because through all of this, it's not that he's trying to escape from prison. He's just trying to get back to his wife. That's the way I look at it. So if he didn't have a wife, he'd probably just try to kill everyone. But he just wants to get back to his wife. And he even talks about how he misses his kids too. And his kids, don't know, because that's in the culture, the kids don't know that
who their father is.
Yeah, but they know who their kids are. And he even says, I miss my kids. So he says, I just want to get back to my family. So now he's going back out. He's going to go back out.
Well, before that, so he's talking with Phillips, and Phillips is talking to him, so much more about the symbols in foreigner language, because he notices that Jewel has, like, the belt and stuff, and they're talking about
belt.
Yeah, and he's talking about, hey, there's this thing teacher, and you have the same symbol, and they basically hug it back and forth because on the way there, I believe it was. It wasn't Vast. I think in the end, because they were kind of talking back and forth about the symbols and symbonology, and I believe it was actually Dev brought it up. She's like, I'm just a pilot, but do you see this one symbol here? It's the only one that doesn't have something, because they were trying to think, is it numbers? Is it this? And she brings up, is that a negative? It's the only thing that has a negative. And I like her speech is like, we're in the UNSC. Everything's a negative. Don't do this. Don't go there. Don't eat that. But in their language, they only have one that has that. And so they realize it has something to do with the didact. Like, don't wake, don't touch, don't do something with
that
them.
name again.
Yeah, and so that's when we first officially figure out the didact name. Because they had been calling it teacher, and Jewel had been trying to figure out what that symbol even meant. And he kind of master, teacher, dictation, stuff like that. So now they finally get that name together for Jewel. And this is where he does fully discover portals, because we have Philip say, yeah, I was on your planet. Your people are lovely, by the way. I solved a lot of ARMs. Also, I used a portal. He's like, you have a portal there, and it's able to use these symbols. So Phillips, unknowingly, because even Jewel brings it up, like he sees it in his eyes, he just thirsts and loves knowledge. He's not doing this to spite him or to do anything. He's literally just talking because he loves it.
Yeah.
So that's where Jewel first gets the idea of, okay, well, if you can go through portals, there has to be a way I can use these then.
Yeah, and so that's when he devises his plan. So remember, his collar is loose enough to where he can pull it off if he needs to. Of course, if it leaves his body, it detonates. And so he goes on a walk with his Hergok companion. And so one thing he does, which I didn't get why he was at first, but it's clever, he starts picking up a bunch of rocks. And he has a handful of rocks that the Hergok doesn't notice. And finally, he finds himself in that area with that thing he wasn't supposed to touch, that the Hergok freaked out over. So he finally starts questioning the Hergok. He goes, listen, these are portals, aren't they? And the Hergok's trying to avoid it, but he's like, I know this is a portal. He goes, listen, I know your mission is that you can't let anything happen to this temple. Like, even if that means I can potentially escape. So what he starts doing is he starts pulling his collar off, and he says, if you don't tell me where these portals go, or you don't let me, or if you don't take this collar off, I'm going to take the collar off myself. It's going to detonate and damage all this Forerunner stuff. And so he starts activating portals, and he starts throwing rocks in these portals to see if he can hear a landing on the other side. So he's kind of having this stalemate with this Hergok, and this Hergok's like, I can't do that. I can't take the collar off. He's like, yeah, but you also can't let anything happen to this Forerunner technology. And so finally, reluctantly, he finds a portal that he hears the rock hit on the other side, and then he finally convinces Hergok to take the collar off. And so when he does that, he just bolts through the portal, and that's it. And it kind of moves on from there. So the scientist who was in charge of
Dr. Magnuson,
she waits 15 hours to tell Parangoski, hey, Jewel escaped.
Yeah, like we don't know where he went. We've been losing comms on occasion when he goes in those Forerunner structures, but there's really nowhere he can go.
Yeah.
However, we talked with the Hergok, and he used a portal.
Yeah, and Parangoski is like, why did you wait 15 hours? Like, well, we had to make sure that we could find him first. And she's like, it would take longer than 15 hours to find him on an entire planet, because he had free roam of it. So Parangoski, and throughout the book, Parangoski's actually been kind of nice. You kind of start to like her more and more than when we first met her in Ghosts of Onyx. Yeah, so you can tell that she's annoyed. And she's definitely planning something, but...
Well, in her monologue, she's like, I can't have another Halsey on my hands. I can't just, forgive mistakes. So no matter the position, she goes, the only thing that I think I've failed is I've put the wrong person in this position, and I hate feeling that way.
Magnuson said it would be impossible to know for years what these portals do.
Yeah.
So we were just letting him go and just assume these portals were fine. And Parangoski's like, no, you should have waited years until you let him walk around and until you knew what these portals did.
Yeah, she's like, oh, it would have been years until we knew. She's like, then you should have kept him prisoner for years in his cell.
Yeah, so now it's like, she's in trouble. she's in a lot of trouble. Parangoski is clearly not thrilled about this.
No. And so Parangoski says, Hood, can you drop me off back at Trevelyan?
When boss wants to talk to you, it's not a good sign. When boss doesn't talk to anybody.
No. So she ends up getting back to Trevelyan. She gets briefed, about Jules' escape and goes with Magnuson and the Huragok to the portals. And she starts asking like these obvious questions that Parangoski thinks that should have been done. Like she's like, oh, the Huragok would have already heard this, such as, so I assume that, you've closed the portals and you can kind of track that. And he's like, well, I can close the portals. And she's like fuming inside her head. So not only did she let him escape, she didn't close the damn door, you know, and was super furious about it. And after she kind of figured out like all the stuff that's happened, she's like seething, but kind of nice. Like, okay, Magnuson, let's go back there. So they start walking back, and she ends up grabbing like just a random Marine who's around. I think was it Austin? I think that's what his name was. I'm trying to remember which one it was, but grabs him like, hey, how's it going? You good? And he like drops the box, and he's like, okay, well, we need to arrest someone. And he gets all kitted out because he thinks it's going to be the elite. And she's like, oh, you don't need that. Prisoner's gone.
You're fine, bud. It's going to be a pretty easy arrest.
Yeah. And so that's when, she goes into the office where Magnuson is and removes her from position and orders that she's sent to, I think it was the Midnight facility.
Yeah. So, which is in the lore a pretty not great place to be. So, yeah, it's like she's basically going to prison for this. She's not getting fired, she's getting arrested.
Yeah, it's like working prison, basically. 'Cause she's like, we can't release her to Gen Pop. She knows way too much. We don't necessarily want to kill her, but we're still going to make her work in Halo's version of Hell in a Cell and move it over there.
Yeah, and that's when our boy Hugo Barton, I don't know why I said our boy, Barton.
He's going to be our boy for this next one.
Is now the head of the Shield World. So he's all like, okay, cool. I'm now in charge here. Hope I don't screw up.
Yeah,
definitely not going to let anyone near a freaking portal anytime soon.
Yeah. And while this is all going on, we now have Kilo 5 is going back to their mission they originally were supposed to do in Glasslands, which was go to Venencia and kind of deal with the rebels in a way, or basically try and figure out what the heck is going on this planet.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back again to where it was addressed that Naomi, our Spartan badass, she's trying to hide that you can tell she's a little uncomfortable with the idea that they're probably going to have to arrest her father, which is this insurrectionist leader. But she's still out there saying, no, I'll be the one to arrest him. I'll do it. It's just another rebel.
It's just another job. I kind of want to see him though, like just to see who he is, but it's just a job. This is what we do. And throughout the book, like I said, kind of those heartstring things, like I think they were in like a mess hall. I think it was on Infinity, and they were bringing up, 'cause I think it's Mal is not a big fan of the Spartan 2 program because of how they had to take kids and do all this other stuff.
I think it was Vaz.
Was it Vaz?
Vaz, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Vaz, the Russian. And so Vaz brings it up that, I don't like that. I don't like to use that. So this whole discussion starts. Well, they always like realize Naomi's there. And obviously she was part of that. So they quiet up. And Naomi brings it up because they start to change the subject and like be like jovial. And she's like, listen, guys, I understand you can talk about this. Like it's fine.
Vaz annoys me for that because he's Mr. White Knight, but at the end of the day is also starting this insurrection. It's like, I'm willing to kill alien children and women, but how dare they, our own humans, mess with our own children? His whole, like, he's Mr. Perfect thing has bugged me since the first book, and I'm assuming it's going to bug me in the third book.
Yeah, but I guess he's also written off to be, like, very homebrewed ODST.
Yeah.
Hates everyone else that's not an ODST, because even in the first one, he doesn't like Phillips until he, like, becomes part of Kilo 5 group.
Until
and, like,
he becomes crazy and starts shooting people. So.
Yes.
Well, Sangheili. But yeah, so they do eventually, it's Vaz and Naomi, and they once again disguise themselves as these rebels, or they're like drifters.
So so they are drifters and they're defectors of the UNSC. So they're playing their soldiers. Like Naomi's still, a huge Spartan out of the armor. Like Vaz even says, like, she, I guess, passes as a person. Like she's still taller than me, and all this stuff. And so their plan is that they're going to kind of infiltrate the market, see what's going on, and they're going back over to Spencer's safe house in his basement to go over the layout, figure out what they're doing, and to kind of hear what are the local watering holes, who's who do we need to look out for. And the plan is for the next day to go sell an MA5B that's tagged to get it into the black market to see how the weapons trade works. So they deal with this weapons trader, whatever you want to call him. And I love it because Vaz the entire way there is like psyching himself up. He's like, I am a deserter. I am a deserter selling this weapon. This was my weapon. Now I am selling it.
It's called method acting.
Yes. And he just pulls the hand down when he sees the guy and goes, I am Russian mobster. And just brings this terrible backstory with him. And sell the weapon off, and the guy's like, hey, if you got anything else, let me know. And that's kind of when Vaz brings up that they have that spirit on that other planet they were just sitting on. He's like, I also got a spirit if you want it. And the guy's like, you bring it to me, we're good.
Yeah.
And so they leave the weaponsmith, they drive around a little bit to kind of get the feel of it. They park up, grab a coney dog, they're down at the pier. And no, driving around, they park up, and this is where they realize that that Covenant cruiser, the Pious Inquisitor, which was supposed to be like the savior ship for Telcam, which never arrived, is actually in planet or on planet, not in the planet. That'd be crazy. And they realize that there is this skirmisher named Sav Fel who owns it. I guess he's got the keys. He's got the fuzzy dice. It says his name on them. That's how they figured it out. Well, Naomi's staring across the street at this box truck, I guess. I was like, that's him. And Val's like, what are you talking about? They look over. Well, they realize that Stefan, which is her father, and Sav Fel are actually riding together in this moving van box truck thing. And that's, boom, that's the end for our Kilo 5 so far.
Yeah, so it kind of like, screen goes black.
Yeah.
But to kind of, finally wrap up this book, where we now end it with Jewel. So we see him come on the other side of this portal, and so he's trying to figure out, like, okay, where am I? This kind of seems familiar, but I'm not totally sure. And he actually runs into some Sangheili. And so he's on a Kelikos.
Yeah, he's on Kelikos, which actually Hesteros. I think it's Hesteros is the Sangheili term for it, but Kelikos was the forerunner name for the planet.
Yeah, and so and this was kind of confusing because I thought he went back in time for a second, but he was like, what, like, kind of trying to figure out what they know, and they're just like, yeah, we sent our young warriors out to fight. This was over a year ago or years ago.
Because what we know so far is that Hesteros is a colony world for the Sangheili.
Yeah, and so he's like, we don't really know what's going on. And Jewel kind of is like, we had this great schism. The war is over. Now we're kind of fighting each other. And so this is where they're like, what's with your belt? Like, you can't, because originally a child discovers him. And so they're like, you came out of nowhere. You have this belt with these forerunner symbols. They're kind of gravitating him as kind of like this prophet almost, or like someone who, like,
he's brought by the gods.
Yeah, brought by the gods. Like, he knows something, but
he is actually playing it up because he has to play that he is a devout because he realizes.
Oh yeah.
He realizes that these are all very devout people who are still under the covenant kind of religion of it that worship them.
Well, because they didn't know what was going on. They were in the dark.
Yeah, and so as he pulls the belt out, they realize these symbols, and they actually know the symbols themselves. And it's like, you have the symbol for, the great teacher. And he's like, oh, the didact. Like, how did you know that name? He's like, well, I came through here. I did this. Like, you are meant to come, and you are meant to figure out this world. Because he had asked them, he's like, do you have a radio that I can contact? I got to get back to Sanghelios. And so this is kind of where we ended. because the youngster who's like kind of talk. So going back a little bit, it ends kind of right there in this hut. They're talking with him, and Jewel says, "Okay, well, listen, I gotta go. I gotta figure out what's going on," because he ends up figuring out that unfortunately his wife is dead, and he learns this because he gets the radio and he contacts back to Sangheili and like, "Sorry, I don't have to tell you both. Your cool Forza video game and your wife died." And so that's when he's like, I need some space. He goes out, he does the dance from Footloose, and he smokes a cigarette and a beer and then dances around in a facility doing some backflips and stuff. And then eventually makes his way where he's kind of like sitting down, sulking and trying to figure out like turning that into rage. Like, I'm going to kill the humans. I'm going to find this didact. And that's when this youngster comes and is like, hey, that thing on your belt, that's like a holy gate, and like this symbol is where you need to go. So they basically kind of figure out where it potentially Requiem is.
Yep. And so that's when he's like, all right, stands up. He's like, that's where we're going.
Yeah, because they finally agree. They go, we'll help you find Requiem because you are this prophet brought to us, and we will help you avenge and do the will of the gods.
Yeah. And so that's where the book ends. Kind of another cliffhanger, 2 or 3 at this point.
I love it. I like, not to jump into my opinion yet, I love the way that she's done these cliffhangers thus far. It actually keeps me interested into what's going on instead of just ending with a monitor taking a ship.
Bear.
No, so yeah, it's like I said, I'm excited by this.
Yeah. So now that we're through the summary, let's talk about what does this do for the lore. So as always, this is the first time that we get a mention of the Storm Rifle, the Mantis, and the Spartan Force. Storm Rifle, why? But whatever.
Gotta throw it in there.
Something that's interesting is that elites refer to ODSTs as coffin worms.
Yeah, and that's one thing we've discovered through this that I really like that Vass brings up is he talks to the Sangheili because BB throughout this can like get in their comms link and translate for them and starts to realize that the Sangheili for their like curse words, basically, it all has to do with parasites. Whereas like with human language, it has to do with like bodily functions or genitalia or whatever you call someone. With this, it's always like a parasitic type. So yeah, so they end up calling them
coffin worms.
Yeah, they end up calling them coffin worms. And it's a really cool look into what they're doing.
Because they refer to the drop pods as their coffins. Essentially, like they're brought down in their coffins and they shoot them out of the sky. We also know that the Hergox know about the didact. These OG Hergox know about the didact, which, at the end of the day, I'll jump later. I'll jump ahead later. But we also know, or we get more exploration about the Forerunner portals, aka the portals in Halo CE.
Yeah.
Multiplayer maps. That's where they're from.
Yeah, so it's really cool. It's just to to kind of see that, and as we get to 4, and as we get to especially 5, seeing portals and seeing so much more within the Forerunner technology, it's really cool that this is really the first look that we're getting into like the rudimentary use of them.
Yeah, we also now know that theoretically the didact is alive and on the Shield World Requiem.
And we get looks into Kelikos, aka Hesteros, which gives us info, or at least more info, on Sangheili colony worlds, which we had really just been looking at Sanghelios as kind of the go-to planet for. We knew obviously expanded out, but more was just on the Covenant grasp, but we're now actually seeing just settled Sangheili worlds, and it gives us the Forerunner connection that these people actually knew a lot more about it than those in Sanghelios.
Yep.
To kind of get that aspect of it. We also get a first look at the power, accuracy, and gravity of Infinity. We actually get to see it in work and just the grand scale of it. We get a also first look into like the Sangheili diet and agriculture.
Yep.
After the Great Schism, because previously they were pretty much taken care of, whether it be by the Sanshayum, who had like the Huragok and the Ungoi kind of farming and working for them. Now we're seeing them get back to it because in the book, we're also talked about that they're back to square one. Like they're back to figure out how to farm, how to do anything. So we get a look at Urukan, which is their grain, and the Kolo, which is the animals that they're eating. We also get an idea on Sangheili women swordsmasters. So we're getting more into that Sangheili culture of, it's very, imperialistic in, like feudal Japan style. Because we also see like the animes and other stuff. That's kind of where we're seeing a little bit of it based on. So we're getting an idea on that. We're getting an idea on how the Jerohane and the Ungoi are used after the war as farmhands, as workers, kind of slaves, but not.
Yeah, they're just paid under the table and probably not paid a lot.
Yeah, Ungoi, I don't know if they're paid at all. And then we get an even better or newer understanding of this Forerunner language and symbols. So we start to delve more into that after Halsey had some of it from Onyx.
Yep. So let's just quickly go over the release versions. As always, paperback, hardback, and audiobook, aka Audible book. So let's talk about the reception overall. Fans and critics were happy with the way that Travis tackled the Halo universe in her first book, and were ready to see where she would take the story with the Thursday War. With the follow-up novel, though, it was becoming a little obvious that Travis wasn't familiar with the Halo universe compared to other authors who had written for the series before, because she had admitted not only that she hadn't played the games, she's like, I really didn't read the books. She's like, I was just told what to write. Which you can kind of see it sometimes because, you know, when Halsey went from someone who we're kind of torn on how to feel to being called a Nazi like 7 times in a book.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, she just kind of had an idea of who this person was and said, this is how I'm going to write her. But we'll talk about that later. Regardless of the story being a little slow, the book still carried on and displayed a compelling story that made fans eager to see what they were going to get for Halo 4, because this absolutely set it up for that. And for the most part, I saw a lot of readers who aren't like critics that weren't happy about this and gamers, but a lot of critics did give it some good reviews overall.
Now, to go back a little bit, were both the Forerunner trilogy and Halo 5 trilogy, were those known as trilogies coming up to this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we still knew that 2 were coming out, or a book a piece was coming out.
Yeah. So it was definitely. I know for a fact it was for the Forerunner trilogy. This one I'm pretty sure it was. So it wasn't just
Makes
like
sense.
one and then it's like another one that they didn't know about. So they knew it was going to be a trilogy.
Okay, I'm just making sure, because that way people weren't just assuming after this book, they're like, oh, Halo 4? Or like another book, Halo 4?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So let's go through some ratings really quick. Goodreads users would give it a 4.1 out of 5. Barnes & Noble's users would give it a 4.6 out of 5. Audible users, that's you guys, give it a 4.8 out of 5. Mighty Ape would give it a mighty 5 out of 5.
Thanks for throwing Mighty Ape, the place I've never heard of, in there. But they give it a 5 out of 5, sure.
Google Books give it a 5 out of 5. Walmart users would give it a 3.5 out of 5, which I think was 2 users. Books A Million users would give it a 5 out of 5. And then I think one eBay user gave it a 5 out of 5. I had to pull from what I could. I had to pull from what I could.
You did good.
So as always, we're done with the notes. So now Alex and I talk about how we felt about the book. So as always, Alex, please start us off.
So Travis did, in my opinion, pretty well with this. Like we talked about, there's a couple points where you and I had to go back through notes and kind of talk about, did that happen? Or, when was it aspect? Oh, I don't remember that being a portion of it. And so we had a little bit of struggle. Once again, this is for us doing the podcast. So this is us speed reading, taking notes, and going through it, not at a leisurely pace. So it could be different. But overall, I love the character development, like I said earlier. I love that she's kind of humanizing all of Kilo 5 now, whereas before it was like ODSTs and a scientist and a pilot and this and that and a Spartan.
There's that family aspect.
It's the family aspect. You definitely see like Sarah Osman taking that family role over and kind of taking care of everybody. A couple comedic things in there. A lot of fun stuff. Seeing the final breakdown, whenever we finally get to Venencia and we see that Spartan 010 is starting to break down and she's like, I don't know if I can go after my father with this. Like, I have to talk about this. Like, what if we have the same eye color? Like, what if we look the same? It's just, it's really humanizing a Spartan.
Yeah.
Whereas Robot Stupid Chief is still in the story. And he comes up. Yeah. So it's overall, like I said, I enjoy the way the book is thus far. I love the introduction to complex Forerunner aspects, like portals and trying to figure out symbols and making it interesting, whereas it's the opposite for me when it actually comes to the Forerunner trilogy.
Yeah, it's basically like there's no ambiguity about it. This is just how it is. As I said, I think the boring parts for me were the action sequences in this story, because it was more so about all the dialogue and the conversations, and as you said, the character development. That's what I really enjoyed in this book more than anything else, and that's really what's going to make me look forward to Moral Dictata.
Yeah, Moral Dictata.
Moral Dictata, and I've heard good things about Silentium, but that doesn't mean I'm looking forward to that, because we're 2 books in to that trilogy. I'm not a fan. And I think, granted, this book was slower. It was slower, but it was a lot more cohesive. And I said a lot more interesting things happened, and I was relating to these characters a lot more. Again, Vaz's whole White Knight thing was kind of annoying to me, but
I disagree with you on that. I don't think he's really white knighting. I think he's taking the personality of being like super pro-human and like very against aliens, but at the same time like protecting his people. So not white knight in a way, I wouldn't say, but like I can understand where you're coming from. Like he doesn't really get to pick and choose.
It doesn't ruin the book for me by any means, but it was still, it's well written for the most part. It is obvious that Karen Traviss was not too terribly familiar with the universe, because just the kind of change in how some characters are is kind of night and day. Like Halsey, as I had said, she's completely different in that first book. And then as well as something that did frustrate me is that where's Blue Team and Mendez? They're kind of just swept under the rug. I wouldn't have mind, unless it's something I miss, of them just being like, and they were reassigned. But it's kind of like, we don't really know. Like they just kind of disappear from the story when they were 1/3 of that first book. And so I thought it would kind of continue, or maybe like, Blue Team would be part of some other story now, but they just kind of disappeared. And that was disappointing for me because, you especially got to feel for Blue Team and Lucy's talking again, and Mendez, you can see that he's gotten so much off of his chest from the first book, and then they're gone. But other than that, I think it was a good book. I think it was a great book, and let's quickly rate this book. I'd say I'd give it probably a 7 or 7.5 out of 10.
Nice. It's tough for me. Like there's plenty of aspects that I really enjoy with it. So overall, I'd probably give it like 2 human dumps in a sacred facility multiplied by thousands of pounds of grain that's been poisoned. And then honestly, divided by the love in our hearts for Vaz.
All right, that's fair. That's a fair rating.
And that equals out to be about 2.5 MA5Bs for sale.
And that is it. So that was The Thursday War, and it was a really fun book. It was a kind of a breath of fresh air compared to the last book that we just had to do, so that was really cool. And of course, this podcast is always supported by our awesome patrons.
Yeah, and so thank you for those who are our patrons. Thanks for those who are thinking about it or have been. It's amazing. It helps keep our podcast going. And as always, want to thank those right here. And we have AngryCanadien, Brenton Bagley, Charles Zitter, Cowyn Fong-Feliciano, DGamer1298, Duststorm, Francis, Grant Dillon, Harvey Chong, James Yervasi, Jonas, Colonel Panic, Taqtix, DragonFire, Mr. Chofe, Pascual Orozco, Skyjack, and Z, Slipaway. So thank you guys for helping us out. And as always, you can become a patron today. It helps, like I said, us immensely, but also you're able to vote on these bonus episodes we have coming out. We have a new one coming out soon, which is very exciting, as well as game nights, Discord, prints, t-shirts, plenty of other stuff that we really have coming out that we're really excited about. And we'll be adding some new content, as time goes on. So definitely look out for that.
And as always, you can find us on any and all podcast platforms. I know Spotify is a huge one for us, as well as iTunes, SoundCloud, CastBox, YouTube, anything you can think of. We are there, and if we're not, please let us know so we can get on that platform and make it easier for you to listen to us. And don't forget as well to follow us on any and all social. We are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, and we are on Instagram. And join our Discord. It is welcome to any and all. And the invite for that Discord, it'll be in the description of this episode. And if for some reason you can't use it, because from time to time some people have some issues, message us on any of our social channels and you will get that invite immediately. And tune in 2 weeks because we are officially in Halo 4 marketing territory. Our next episode will be Halo 4 Forward On to Dawn. Not Halo 4 yet, but Halo 4 Forward On to Dawn, the web series / movie.
Exactly, because then we're forward on to like midday, and then eventually forward on to like night, and then we're on to 4.
What about evening?
No, see, the evening skipped up because like midday I took a nap and then slept through evening, so now it's late night.
You wake up, you're like, what day is it?
Exactly.
And with that, I am your host, Jesse Reiners.
And I'm your host, Alex Kendall.
And thank you for tuning in to Finish the Fight, a Halo podcast.